Hey, everybody. Good to see you on here today. We're going to have a great conversation about teammate mentality and how to develop the right kind of team within your ministry context. Today, we're joined by one of my partners, one of the executive pastors of Southern Hills, Pastor Fred Murray, incredibly gifted leader, great administrator, and somebody who really does know how to not only be a team player, but lead teams of team players. And the content that you're about to receive really is next level. It's something that you're going to want to be able to share with not only your own team, but maybe a few specific individuals on your team to maybe go back and watch this replay later. If you are watching this as a replay later, I know a lot of ministers right now, a lot of team folks out there, a lot of members of the Idea Network have to watch this later on. And as you're catching this replay, I want to encourage you, if you have a further question, please feel free to reach out to myself, Jason, Kylie, or even our guest today, Pastor Fred Murray, and ask that follow-up question. We're going to have a great conversation today, I know, and we're going to have some information coming forthright. But before we go any further, it's important that we open up in a word of prayer and ask God to bless our time together. So I'm going to throw it to Larry Gatlin. Larry, would you open us up in a word of prayer and ask God to bless our time of fellowship?
Can everybody hear me? Thumbs up. All right, let's pray together. Father, thank you for the opportunity we have to gather and really just hear great ideas and information that could be helpful. Lord, it's our prayer that you'd be honored, you'd be glorified. Lord, I ask you to use this time to help each and every one of us maximize ministry time that's your time. Lord, I pray for our speaker today, our guest that will be bringing this information. Lord, pray you bless him. Lord, help us to apply this wisdom, this information to our own ministry context. Lord, I pray for those that might be hurting or struggling today, that you would bless them and encourage them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, Larry. I'm excited about today. I love a good talk on teamwork. I love the team mentality. And I'm excited for Fred being with us today. One thing I do want to mention before we get started is the Idea Summit is coming up in January 30th through February 1st. We've advertised it. We've talked about it, but it's coming up. It's going to be here before too long. I just booked my hotel yesterday, and I'm excited about the summit. Hope you guys are as well, making plans to be with us in Dallas, Texas in just a few months with Dr. Tony Evans. That's the big announcement for today, and that's all that I've got. I hope you guys are enjoying your fall season of ministry. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Josh to introduce our speaker today.
All right. Today we have the opportunity of, like I said, of hearing from Pastor Fred Murray. Fred and I have worked together now for over 15 years at Southern Hills in Las Vegas. And as an executive pastor who focuses on administration, he's uniquely situated to talk to us today about what it means to live and work within a team mentality. Not only is there myself and him, there's Pastor Jason, who leads worship and creative programming. Pastor Caleb, who leads spiritual formation and next gen. And we've got a wide range of great leaders on our team. How exactly does that play out in your ministry context? So the principles that are going to be shared today are going to be broad. And then we're going to go specifically to our roundtables, where we're going to have an opportunity of discussing, some of you with Jason and some of you with me, how this applies to you in your specific situation. So be ready for those cues so we can give some A's a little later on. But without any further ado, Pastor Fred Murray.
Hey, thanks, Pastor Josh. Thanks, Jason and Kylie. I'm a Vegas native. I've grown up here. I've known Josh forever. And growing up in Vegas, went through the public school system. And essentially, let me take this blur off. It's annoying me. So there we go. Essentially, went up through public school, and I remember my first day in a high school, went to Cimarron Memorial, was probably about 2 miles from Liberty Baptist Church. And on their marquee, they had this goofy saying that said, together each, it was team spelled out, and it said, together each achieves more. And as a 14-year-old freshman, I thought that was the dumbest thing ever. It was just a cheesy, oh, yay, it's great for a t-shirt. This is stupid. Because obviously nobody can do anything as good as I can. And so who needs teamwork? But going through life has taught me differently. And The cool thing about a team is simply people working together to achieve a common goal. That's what it comes down to, achieving a common goal. And if team, the cheesy acronym is together each achieves more. If you want to achieve more personally, you need to do it together with somebody else. It's pretty self-explanatory. And I have found through my years here at Southern Hills that I can do pretty well working on projects. I do very, very well with that. But when I team up with a team, it works way better. So I'll give you an example of this past summer. This past summer was the first year that Pastor Josh actually took a full-fledged sabbatical. And what he did is he laid out the vision for us in late May to, hey, look, this is what I want accomplished for the summer. And myself, Pastor Jason, and Pastor Caleb were essentially able to keep the church afloat, keep the church going during that his vacation time plus his sabbatical time, which turned out to be 9 weeks. And our average went from 1,100 down to 1010. We were thinking 1,100 down to 850 was the probability there. So that's just one example of how a team can achieve more when working together. And working a team does have its pros and cons, but there are some personal benefits which we'll talk about, some personal responsibility, some group benefits, and then some group responsibility. Then we'll break into our breakout sessions there. But personal benefits that I have found when it comes to working in a team, reduce stress. Because the team provides a support network. There is times where you will sit there and say, I am running out of ideas to make this work. This actually happened to me last night. I'm sitting on the ice at my kids' hockey practice, running a drill, and I still had 10, 15 minutes left. And I'm like, okay, I've run this drill to death. Hey, Coach Tony, any variations to this drill that we can do? And we did some variations, and the drill actually worked out pretty well. When the parents came up to me afterwards and said, this is the best practice we've seen all season. And just teamwork, making something better. That support network is nice. Also, teamwork's much more fun than working alone. Think about how many times you're working alone and you actually break out in laughter. It doesn't happen. If it does, I think you're weird. But anyways, it doesn't really happen. But I've been in multiple team settings where literally Josh, Jason, myself, and Caleb sit there laughing hysterically because we're just having fun together as we are accomplishing some goals. And another benefit to help reduce stress is it welcomes distraction. Sometimes you get so focused on what you're doing and you feel like you're the only person there. You can get distracted. We saw this with Elijah in 1 Kings. He was so depressed because he thought he was the only guy doing the Lord's work. And when I get reports from Caleb, Josh, and Jason saying, this is what God did at Southern Hills this week, it makes me feel like I'm part of something bigger, which then reduces my stress and I'm actually enjoying work more. Another benefit for me is there's been a bit of motivation to improve. You learn from your teammates. You learn from your teammates and they learn from you. And that aspect there of when you see somebody up and coming and growing, it challenges you. Personally, you don't like getting beat. If it's a race, you like it to be close. You don't want to get whooped. And so working in a team has helped me be motivated to improve because I see others up and coming that are succeeding and I want to be right there with them. I don't want to be the person on the team that is holding them back, which helps me to reach greater goals. With reaching greater goals, I become more engaged, I become challenged, and you have a greater impact, like I mentioned with Pastor Josh being on sabbatical. So the benefits: reduce stress, motivation to improve, greater goals reached. And I think that's really what it comes down to. For me, reaching greater goals is why I like doing what I'm doing. So just recently here at Southern Hills, we modified our leadership structure because Josh and I were looking at this, and the goals that we have for the church for the next 20 years are huge. And Josh and I were looking at this and he says, Fred, I think we need to bring up more team players to help assist in this aspect. So we created a 3-front of executive pastors, myself, Jason, and Caleb, to really help us go from 1,200 to 2,500 to 5,000 where we want to be in the next few years. And because the mission is there, I'm all in. I want to achieve more. So therefore, I don't mind working with 3 or 2 other excellent team members with a great leader in Pastor Josh. So because I want to see things done, being in a team is the best way, in my opinion, to get that done. Now, in being being a team member, you also have some personal responsibility that you have to do. I'm gonna have Pastor Josh help me out with this one a little bit as well. But this comes from Patrick Lencioni's book, The Ideal Team Player. He focuses on 3 key areas that every employee needs to be or to work towards that they can be an effective teammate. And that comes down to being humble, hungry, and smart. A humble employee simply is someone who is more concerned with the success of the team, than his or own personal credit that they receive for their contributions. A hungry person is a person with the desire to work hard and to do whatever is necessary to help the team succeed. And a smart person is not talking about intelligence, but a person who knows how to deal with other people and relate with them. And so for us, Pastor Josh introduced me to this principle about 4 or 5 years ago, and something that we've really focused on is our team hungry, humble, and smart. And so Pastor Josh, what are some benefits that you've seen, benefits or negatives, when somebody as an employee is not one of these 3 aspects: humble, hungry, and smart?
Yeah, Lencioni does an incredible job in that book expressing that these are not 3 attributes that somebody should hope for, or maybe you have 1 or 2 that you're really good at, but that all 3 are absolutely essential for all team players. You can have somebody who is both humble and hungry, but they're not people smart. They genuinely don't think of themselves before they think of everybody else. They're not egocentric or narcissistic, and they are hungry. They're wanting to move the organization forward and to advance the cause of Christ. They're ambitious, but they're not people smart. And so as an individual who's not people smart, they are constantly putting their foot in their mouth, and they're pushing people away, and they're hurting relationships, and they're destroying everything that the team is trying to build. They're just not good with people. And so with that, there needs to be a confrontation and a training on how to be better people smart. A great illustration of this, if you've ever seen The Big Bang Theory, is the socially awkward Sheldon. He is not in any way people smart. He needs to learn. So you could also have somebody who's really people smart and they're extremely humble, right? They really know how to socially interact, and they are humble. They're genuinely not all about themselves, but they have no hunger. They're not ambitious for the cause of Christ. They're not ambitious for themselves. They don't have a deep, abiding dissatisfaction with the status quo. They're really laid back and easygoing. And that's awesome, except that they have no passion to move forward. And so oftentimes somebody who's not hungry, they have a difficult time getting up in the morning. And they have a difficult time when they get up in the morning, getting into work, to do anything other than just hang out. And so this is really problematic within a team setting, because you have other people that are really passionate about moving things forward, and they're looking at this guy or this gal constantly, and they're just not pulling their weight. That's the phrase that they'll hear. They're not pulling their weight. They're not hungry, and they need to be hungry like the rest of us. These are not personality traits. Our proposition is that they're character flaws, and that they can be trained, and that they can be improved if the individual is made aware of it. Or you can have somebody who really is hungry. Man, they're hungry. They're people smart, man. They know how to deal with people, but they're not humble. They are all about advancement, but it's about self-advancement. They genuinely want others to do well so that they can get their accomplishment across. There is a lack of humility filled with egotism and narcissism. So humility is essential in this process. And so this is one of the things that we see in that book. It's a great book to pick up. And one of the things Pastor Fred, actually, we speak of to our team quite a bit. In fact, we annually provide bonuses based upon hungry, humble, and smart.
And I would say on the humble one, the biggest caution that I was called on with Pastor Josh about 4 or 5 years ago was, he says, "Fred, you're too humble." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You don't tell me what you do." So I think there's a balance of not worrying about getting credit, but you do need to let your senior leader know, hey, this is what I've contributed. This is what I've done. And if somebody helped you with it, give credit to that person. So Josh, you want to speak into that a little bit as well?
Yeah, we say it this way: if you do not toot your own horn, your horn will forever go untooted. You can tweet that if you want, and nobody will like it. Here's what it means practically for you. If you're pastoring a church of 80 people, 125 people, you need to occasionally pull the leadership aside. You need to sit down with your deacons. You need whoever has influence, and you need to sit them down and say, I just want to let you know what's been going on the last 3 to 4 months. We've been doing this, we've been doing this, we've been doing this, we've accomplished this, and we've accomplished this, and these are the things we've done. How awesome is God that he's allowing us to see these great accomplishments take place? You should be tooting your own horn. Here's why. Because what'll happen is after 6 months to a year to 3 years, these people will be like, what does this guy do anyway? He never does anything. And there's a natural assumption of I'm great and other people around me are not great. So it's okay to project what you're actually accomplishing. This is under the people smart category. You want to express to the leadership of the church what you're accomplishing. If you have a direct report and you are not the pastor of the church, and you have somebody that you respond to, you should be actively sitting down with those people. And you should be saying, hey, just so you know, this is what I've accomplished this quarter. Even if they're not asking for you to give their quarterly goals, you should be offering, these were my quarterly goals, and these are the things that I was able to accomplish. How awesome is that? Isn't it wonderful that God was allowed us to accomplish these things? I set out to do this in March, and now by June, it's all been accomplished. This is great. So it's not a lack of humility to express what you've been accomplishing and what the people of God have been paying for you to accomplish.
Thanks, Pastor. I think it's really key that on teamwork, you understand your benefits and your responsibility, but I want to take a second to go over the group benefits of teamwork. First of all, there's a greater knowledge pool when you are working in a group. I would say knowledge pool, but also an understanding of who people are. There's a greater community pool. So one of the things I really like about working with my team is the fact of if one of us wants to get something done, most often there is hey, I know a guy who can help us with that. I know a guy who's a leader in this area. So we come together and we brainstorm different things that we want to do. For instance, Pastor Caleb next month is doing our huge Kids Fest. So that entire program falls on him. But in our meetings, I was like, hey, Caleb, my concerns are, do the guests have a place to park? I did not sit there and say, hey, Caleb, the guests don't have a place to park, so therefore we can't have Kids Fest. I said, my concern is, do the guests have a place to park? What are your thoughts? And he came up with a game plan, like, cool, my concerns are done. Let's go with Kids Fest. Let's have a blast doing it. So as a team member, I was not dictating whether or not he could or could not do the events. I was expressing concern, brainstorming an idea to make sure that our guest experience on Sunday is what it usually is. And he took that and ran with it and has a game plan dialed in. There's been some other brainstorming sessions that we've done here at Southern Hills that have really come to the team setting that have been great, just because there's just certain things that certain people don't know. When it comes to music, I know nothing. So if I'm doing something and I say, hey, look, I want to do this event, but I want program to be great, I automatically look over to Pastor Jason and say, what are your thoughts on how to make this project great? I'm still responsible for it, but I'm relying heavily on a teammate to bring his skills and expertise into that meeting, which leads to problem solving becomes way easier. When there is issues, one of the issues that we were concerned about while Pastor was gone during sabbatical is will the church people still feel connected? That was a meeting that we were having. How do we stay connected to the people, even though most of them will be taking vacations and all these things? And so we came up with an idea as a team. I don't know whose idea it was, but literally to call every single member, was Pastor Caleb's, call every single member twice or once a month with the specific aspect of Pastor Josh wants to be praying for you. What can he pray about? And it was a great way for us to stay connected to people. And we're seeing the benefits of that now because our attendance literally 2 months after Josh's major sabbatical is higher than it's ever been before. And so that's a great example of how problem solving can help. And also allows for organizational change. For us, we're going through an organizational change with 3 executive pastors. And it's just easy to work together as a team. And one of our departments that Pastor Caleb oversees is this. It was so funny. This last week, we were at our staff training and our NextGen team was presenting how to use Google and Google Workspace and all this stuff. And I just looked over at Pastor Josh and said, I am so glad this is not me doing this anymore, because it was one person trying to present to 12. This is why we need to use this calendar, but instead it was the opposite. It was like 4 or 5 people presenting to us why we need to use it. It was really interesting experience because the team was involved, organizational change was easier as opposed to me just saying, hey, as executive pastor administration, this is what you need to do. It was a really cool experience. Josh, if you wanted to speak into that aspect real quick as well.
When you have a team, well, just like Fred was saying, it's not only on you to express the great things. And as the team has matured, we've noticed there are other people that come along with the same passions that you have, and suddenly they're able to express it. And you don't have to. So how do you utilize that for a church of 120 people? And you say, I don't really have much of a team, but you do. You have men and women of influence in your local community church, like your deacons, so that instead of you having to be the person who's constantly presenting this idea, is it possible that you can sit down with your deacons and allow them to develop their own concepts that are in line and aligned with yours, and that you can express to them, I would like you to be able to express this at the next church meeting. I'd like you to be able to express this. This way, people understand it's not just a singular voice in the room that is expressing this organizational and ministerial change. It's your leadership as well.
Yeah, that's been huge for us. And I would say, yeah, so for us, it's easy as a staff. Hey, we have all these staff structures, but for the pastor who's sitting at a church of 100 people and has 3 or 4 deacons, that is your team. And they can be a vital help to you. So those are the group benefits, group responsibility, 3 simple things, and we'll get to the breakouts here. Group responsibility, communication. Communication is key. Communication reduces conflict and builds healthy work relationships. Believe it or not, Pastor Josh and I have had actually not physical, but verbal fights over the last 15 years, just because we don't see eye to eye on things at times. But one thing that has helped greatly, and I would say definitely over the last 3 since we read Crucial Conversations, was that, simply put, from Josh, all I need to know is the why. And that's communicating. So I know why he's thinking something, even though if I don't agree with it, I know why my leader is thinking something. It helps me relax, me be more calm, me think, okay, I know the why, how can I implement what he is seeing? So communication's key, reduces conflict, builds healthy work relationships, because trust is built. If you don't trust somebody, it's very difficult. If you don't know their motives, it's very difficult. Communication brings all that out. So not only communication for the group also needs to have submission. Pastor Caleb was quoting scripture the other day, like he always does. And he said, submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. And you have to allow the leader to make the call while supporting his ability to make that call, even if internally you disagree with that. I talked about with, hey, allowing Caleb to make the call on Kids Fest. Hey, as long as parking's cool, I'm good. And there's times where Josh and I have had meetings where it's like, hey, we disagree. Here's the concerns. But soon as I walk out of that room, I'm submitting to the leadership of the person in charge of the organization, Pastor Josh, in that case. And so as you are leading your teams, simply say, guys, I appreciate all your inputs and I need your buy-in for that, which does lead to unity towards the mission, because the mission's everything. Our mission is to make disciples for Jesus. And we're going to do that by doing 15 different things over the next 20 years, which are incredibly awesome here at Southern Hills. But a group that allows team members to exist who are not on board with the mission, you're going to die. You're going to get nothing done. So it's better to have somebody who may not be as skilled in a position or an ability or talent, but has the passion to accomplish that mission. They'll be much better for you than anything else. And so for years ago, in our deacons, for instance, we were always looking for guys who could balance the checkbook and simply, yeah, can you run a budget? And then we transitioned to who are guys that can help us lead the organization forward. Who are guys who are on board with, hey, we need to be wise about spending our money, but who are guys that are willing to, in a sense, follow Josh and take risks? Because that's who we are by nature. We're risk takers because we want to make sure that we are making the best use of the talents God's given us. And so group responsibility, communication, submission, and unity. The group needs to be focused on that in order for a team to work effectively. And so that's what I have to share. I'm sure we can make these notes available for you online, but Pastor Josh and Jason, the floor is yours. So.
Sweet. Thanks, Fred. Appreciate that. I really enjoyed that format of the tag team between Josh and Fred, and hope you guys enjoyed that as well. I'm going to throw these questions into the chat. There they are. What do you like best about teamwork? What frustrations do you have about teamwork? Looking forward to getting into those two. what are some ways the leader can still lead while working with a team? And then number 4, what are the advantages of working with someone who is humble? What about hungry? And what about smart? We've got 2 breakout rooms we're going to divide into for the next little bit. And then we'll see you guys back here in the main room in just a little while. All right. What's up, guys? Let me see who we got in here. Everybody doing all right? I had to turn my camera off for a minute to grab my book. Fred, this is one of my favorite books, but I enjoy Lencioni, Ideal Team Player, that you got here. All of his stuff is good. And so I'm glad that you highlighted this. We've got most of the guys, I think most of the guys we've had in this room have been in a room with me for the last little bit. The guy I've got in the middle of my screen does not look like Tim Wilcox. I see the name Tim Wilcox, but that looks more like Garrett. If you guys want to unmute yourselves, that would be easiest, and we'll just jump in to the conversation here. Josh Williams, you're new, I think, to this group. I want to see what the rest of your shirt says, if you don't mind. What do you got there?
I don't know where my camera is.
Hardest
worker in the room.
All right.
Got a rock shirt
I'm
on.
the only one in the
From a
room.
bull.
So
I know you're the rock dude. We expect a lot from you in conversation coming into this breakout wearing a shirt like that. I'm just messing with you. Hey, you were in tell me the name of the city you're at in Alabama, Josh. I saw your name on the chat earlier.
Foley.
And then Andrew Peters, you're in Alabama too, right? How far are you from each other? Do you guys know each other?
We are about 4 hours from each
wow.
other. He's down on the coast. I'm on the northern end. I'm above Birmingham, Josh. Josh, are you the guys? Is your wife the one that sells the soap?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we bought that for our Mother's Day this past year.
Cool.
So I've been stalking you. You just don't know it.
Alabama connection. There it is. Way to go. Good to see you guys. Let's jump into conversation. Question number 1. What do you like best about teamwork? If you want to start, jump right in. You want to raise your hand or whatever, go for it. But we'll just kind of have a small group today.
A few things that Dale and I work together. We're in the different room. I have to be careful what we're saying because we're the recorded one, and I don't want him
True.
to hear,
Yeah.
especially number 2. But what do I like best about it? We have such different gifts, spiritual gifts. I'm a talker, an encourager, exhorter. He's the server and loves to do things, and so I get to talk, and he gets to put away the tables and chairs after an event, and and it seems to work out. But I just like how God brings people together, and it meshes. So
For sure. I love that. I think we're so attracted in ministry to people that are like us, but that does not always work well in tandem. And so I'm glad that you pointed that out. That's a great thought. Who else wants to jump in on one?
I think I love most about teams and teamwork, and I've worked a lot by myself in ministry as a church planner, is the accountability and like, for instance, to set a goal and your team keeps you accountable to the goal. If you're by yourself, you can change the goal, you can keep moving the finish line, and nobody knows. That's what I love most about a teamwork, is the accountability. It gets things done.
That's a great thought about moving the finish line. Nobody knows. I like the idea of accountability. Great thought, David. Really good. Who else?
I like the sounding board aspect of it. You can go to your team and say, "Hey, am I insane here?" And they'll either tell you yes or no. And so sometimes it's, "Yeah, that's stupid. Don't do that." Other times they're like, "That makes a lot of sense." Or if we just tweaked it a little bit this way, it could be very beneficial. So the sounding board of, "Hey, I'm thinking about this. What are your thoughts? Help me flesh this out more so it's beneficial to everybody." That's one of my favorite aspects of doing that, because when you do that, you get buy-in from the others because they've had to say as well, and you're able to, with multiple people, say, "This is how we want to go forward," and we've fleshed through as much as we possibly could, as far as hiccups, but this is what we want to do. And it's a great sounding board because it lets the dumb ideas fade away and the good ideas come forward. So
Yeah. Yeah, so true. I think
I identify with the
obviously.
dumb idea side.
Say again, Chris.
I was gonna say I identify with the dumb idea being filtered through Dale. He lets me know if it's a dumb idea.
Hey, in the multitude of counselors, there's wisdom, and so I think that that's a solid principle. I'll tell you, when we do an event, we'll go through in our staff meeting and we'll talk about the event after it's done. And then on the events that I run, I'm always looking for feedback. Hey, what did we do well? What did we do poorly? What was something from your perspective that you think we can do a better job at? Somebody that's seeing this with fresh eyes. We had a call last week that came in, or 2 weeks ago, and a lady, was interested in giving us feedback. And I love calls like that. I love them and I hate them, because I hate them in that we didn't get it right the first time, but I love them in that, people are generally gracious to say, hey, here's a suggestion for next time. And I love the sounding board. I answered this question with the word camaraderie. I love having people in the trenches with me, even if it's one other guy or two other people. It's always more fun to win as a team. I always feel a little bit bad for tennis players when they win a match, because they're just there, they're celebrating. But I love baseball, when somebody, when somebody's going to win the World Series in, a few weeks, and they're going to all jump in there as a team. Even golf, he's got his caddy there. It's always more fun to win as a team than it is to win by yourself. But those are great thoughts. Any other thoughts on number one before we move on?
Kind of dovetailing with what you just said, but the encouragement that, because Mondays are down days sometimes, and just people can get at you sometimes, but there's a lot of encouragement in teamwork.
Yeah. Right on. Any go ahead, Andrew.
Mine would be everything that's already been said. The 2 words would be camaraderie and sounding board. It really is the thing that caused me to join the Idea Network about a year ago, was for those 2 things, for the camaraderie, for the sounding board, and wanting to be wise in the ways that I relay that to my team as well.
Awesome. Let's go to number 2, the other side of the coin. What frustrations do you have about teamwork? What's the downside to working as a team? Come on, man. I intentionally put Dale in a different room than you, Chris.
I'm sure.
Liberty to speak. I intentionally put Fred in this room and Josh in the other.
Mine's the recorded one, so Dale has all deniability on this one
That's
here.
true. That's true.
So go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, I'll go for it. I would say I hit it on earlier, just communication. You can't read somebody's mind. And that's the hardest part about teamwork, is a team working together. And I really wish I could know Josh's motives constantly. I wish I could know what Caleb was thinking and Jason was thinking on a consistent basis. I just don't. And so it does take work to sit there and say, what are you thinking? Why do you want to do this? And so the fact of it's just not an easy thing makes it difficult at times. And so, but it takes the work, the trust, to really get down to the why for me. And so how's this going to, and it really comes down to, you do have to critique, is this thing we're doing helping advance the mission? Because that's why we're a team. If we're not going to be working on the mission together, I might as well just do it myself. And so, but you have to work through those little nuances to make sure the mission's accomplished. And again, majority of the time it comes out better, but it takes the work of getting through communication, because you can't read somebody's brain. So that's my frustration.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, right along with that, I know that my own thoughts get in the way of, I question people's motives. I'm an analytical person, and so not knowing Dale's motivations sometimes for doing something, or not even knowing what he's going to decide sometimes, or knowing that he isn't going to decide, that it's on my shoulders to decide. It boils really down to a lot of communication. And then I would dovetail with that a lot of prayer and conquering your own your selfishness within all that. So like my own brain goes wild with thoughts of what I think his motivations might be. And if I'm not thinking biblically, like my own flesh gets in the way sometimes. So that brings me to the book Humilitas. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that, by John Dixon. Just a fantastic, any team I think needs to understand humility, because the biggest frustration you have is your own pride, really. So
Hey, Chris, give me the author of that again.
it's John Dixon, Humilitas. It's not necessarily a Christian book, although I kind of think that the author might be one. But it says some just absolute fantastic principles on humility there.
That's an excellent resource. I'm not familiar with that book, but I'll look
I don't know where I picked it up. Somebody recommended it to me, and it's been good. In there, it says every leader needs, or every person that wants to be humble, it's about humility. And somebody that wants to be humble needs to have a plain speaking friend. So somebody that'll just be blunt with you.
That's good. Thanks for sharing that resource. That's good stuff. Who else wants to jump in on two? What frustrations do you have about teamwork?
I think one of the things that we've lost in the day and age that we live in is the constraint of teams, or even of local churches too. I think about it in the context of local church too. And so I think one of the frustrations is working with people who easily find an out and aren't as disciplined or diligent at maintaining relationships with one another, even through the conflict. And so it's a beautiful thing, but it's also a rare thing to find a group that understands that constraint. It's like, hey, through thick and thin, if we agree upon the mission, then we can disagree about whatever. I think about it in a marriage too. You can disagree in a healthy manner, knowing that at the end of it, the relationship is going to remain. And so I found that to be frustrating at times, is if you're not all bought into that idea of the constraint, then you'll lose people relatively easily when conflict arises.
Really well said.
Similar to what everybody's been saying, you were always taught to staff to your weaknesses. So that means you have people around you that have very different personalities, think very differently. And that just brings a frustration. Obviously, the good frustration of people need to be able to say, hey, you need to rethink this. But sometimes it's those that don't handle the difficult times, like Tim is talking about, the frustrating times. When you need to say something that might be a little bit heavy, and your type personality is, hey, let's hash this out, and 15 minutes later we'll go eat. Well, some of your staff's not like that, because you staffed your weaknesses, and they got their tail between the legs for the next week, and you're trying your best to continue to build that relationship, tell them it's nothing personal. And so there's sometimes that frustrations because you have so many people of differing personalities around you.
Sure. Hey, I'll say something about kind of frustrations with teamwork, and then I want to go to two guys. I want to call out these two guys and then talk about it to give these two guys something to say or to think about it anyway. But I want to talk to Micah Bosworth as well as Adam Bray, because these are guys who are more church planters, and they don't have a broad staff of 8 people that they can just delegate to, hey, do this, do this, do this. So they're going to view teamwork differently than I am. And so I want to go to those two guys next. But my frustration with teamwork is this. I said it earlier as a positive, but when we win as a team. But when we lose as a team. And my frustrations with teamwork is the mistakes of other people that are on my team that now become my mistakes that I didn't make, but I'm responsible and accountable for those mistakes because they're my teammates. And so I think to me, that's my biggest frustration, is when a mistake is made on my team. And although I didn't specifically make the mistake, it's still my responsibility to deal with the fallout of the mistake that was made, because I do want to be a team player. I don't want to just, kick that guy to the curb and say, yeah, well, I know who made that mistake and they won't be with us much longer or whatever. But I feel like that's probably my biggest frustration, is when mistakes are made that are not my mistakes, I absorb those as a teammate, as a team player. I want to go to Mike or Adam. Either one of you guys want to jump in on just teamwork in general and what that perspective is like from you that's maybe different from some of the others here?
For
for me right now is building that team camaraderie. I staff with 2 people where we just started now within the last month, meeting each week. Having staff meetings is something they're not used to. Listening to them this morning, at the end of the month, having a annual meeting to get the calendar set for next year. So my process right now is building that camaraderie. And all these things that Fred said today is right on the money, is that we got to be accountable to each other. We got to communicate with each other. And that's the things that I'm building the most right now, is just being to help each other and us building that team, because I'm huge into sports. Once again, you got to see the North Carolina jersey back there, right, Jason?
Yeah, I see you. I see you.
So you gotta build that teamwork together to both, like you just said, the losses and the victories, talk through those things, what things work, what things didn't work, and admitting when things don't work well.
Good point. Micah, you got anything you want to add to that?
I would just add so like in my context, the biggest frustration I feel like, compared to, I worked on a team when I worked for Dennis Mountain and Moses Lake. What was awesome about being on that team was when I had a project or anything, everyone else who was on staff, they were on staff for a reason. They had the passion and the want to get those things done. Whereas now, not having staff and being a church planner, the frustration is that I have to start from the kind of what Fred was saying, the why, and get people bought into the why first, because not everyone is just automatically already bought into whatever's going to take place. So when I come to them with a project or anything like that to join a team for one of our outreaches or events, a lot of times they're really just not convinced, other than a few really dedicated people in the church. So for me, really the third question is where I was thinking of ways that I can lead and trying to still work on a team. It's easy in my context to just lead and not do a team, because I don't want to go through the steps of convincing them the why and all of that. I can just do it all. But finding the way to lead by motivating them with the why we're doing what we're doing, getting, first of all, getting them recruited as a team with that why, and then from there, working with all of what we've already just talked about, their diverse gifts and all of that, and getting them plugged into where they can most effectively then help us accomplish that why. So
Good perspective. Who else? Anyone else want to jump in on 2 before we move on?
I think just one more frustration that I would say is sometimes when communication does not happen, decisions still have to be made on time, and time stops for no person. And so sometimes you make a judgment call and it doesn't go well. So, but yeah, time stops for no person, even though the decisions still have to be made.
Yeah, communication can be huge frustration. Real good. All right, number 3, we're on the topic of teamwork. What are some ways the leader can still lead while working with a team? A couple of you, I think, are pretty well suited to answer a question like this. What kind of thoughts do you guys have on 3?
One of the things I would say is communicating the value that you bring. So I think, people, we're talking about the why, and people, if they don't understand the why, and if they don't believe that you add value to whatever it is that you're doing, then yeah, you'll hardly ever get buy-in. But if you can communicate to them, hey, and I think about it with age too, you could be young, could be old, doesn't matter. But if you can step in and say, hey, here's the value that I'm going to bring, here's how I'm going to help you, here's how we're going to accomplish this together, then I think people are more likely to follow your lead. You don't do that, you'll be hard pressed to find people to follow.
Good thought.
I think if the leader defines roles for the team, that is very helpful as well. So when Josh So one of the positions I work with on Josh is I'm also on the board of the church. So you have Josh as the president, me as the treasurer, and a couple directors and the secretary there. One thing that Josh has done very well is define, hey, for the church, for the board, for the pastoral staff, and for the church as the whole, my main job, and besides being the spiritual overseer, is to be the visionary. And so when it comes to, hey, what do we want to do? Everybody naturally looks to Josh. When it's, hey, how do we get that done? Everybody naturally looks to myself, Jason, or Caleb on how do we get that aspect done when it comes to a church setting. When it comes to a board setting, there's other members there that people look at. But defining the role has been very, very helpful. So that's why we as a executive team, Jason, Caleb, and myself, really sat down with Josh in May and said, hey, you're leaving for 2 months. What's the vision? Just simply, what is the vision? And how do we do it? Because Josh has established himself as the visionary leader here for us. And so he's able to lead, even though the other team members are carrying out most of the work. But I told him when he came back, I said, we did a great job. We did a great job of facilitating your vision while you were gone. But at the same time, though, don't be gone, because we like having your vision lead us and tell us where to go. So if the team leader can define the roles and say, hey, look, I'm the visionary, you are the administrator, you are the creative, you are the spiritual developer, like Josh has done with us, that can be very helpful, because we know who the leader is and what his role is and what everybody else is as well.
That's good. That's really well said. What else on 3?
I think one of the biggest things is being an example. My wife and I were at a retreat this weekend, and we had a guy there talk about spiritual leadership, and he mentioned that you don't have to always be the driver, but you do need to stay driven. And so always staying driven, but once again, being that example to show people, hey, you don't always have to be in the driver's seat, but you can stay driven.
That's a good quote.
I like the analogy of like a baseball team or just a sports team. The coach doesn't necessarily go dunk the basketball pretty well, but he's still a coach for a reason. And he sees some things that maybe other people don't. So I think that there's a lot of value in letting your talented team go play ball, and you can look for the areas that you need to address and lead in.
I think also, and I love what Fred said about the three big aspects of being a good team member, being hungry and so forth. I think staying in a position where you're listening to your team, everybody feels heard, everybody feels seen. When morale dips, like if you're not reaching a goal or what have you, or if you had a dry spell, that everybody feels like they, and whoever just recently said that, and I think Fred also said, like, defining people's roles, when everybody knows what their role is, but they also feel heard and seen, that their value is appreciated. If you just listen to your team, that's going to keep morale high. And sometimes when things are kind of dry, we can all push together because we all value each other. We all appreciate each other's. And I've been a part of teams where the leader really didn't care about everybody else. They were just an oar pusher. And it was all about for the leader's sake. So I think listening to your team is important in order to keep everybody connected in that team.
Good deal. That leads us right into number 4. What are the advantages of working with someone who is humble, hungry, and smart? David kind of led us right into that question. Humble, hungry, and smart. What are the advantages of being on a team, working with somebody that has those qualities?
The advantage is that the team works.
Yeah.
And so, like, Dale probably is one of the more humble people, and I'm not just saying because this is the recorded side, but he's probably one of the more humble people that I've ever met. and so when he says something or does something, It's always very well thought out. It's always in a very caring and kind way. And so it makes the actual team work when somebody is humble, when somebody is constantly just as hungry and just as smart as you. I mean, we're both putting blood, sweat, and tears into this thing. And so when the team is doing that, it's just good outcomes are there. So.
Yeah, I think we all have a natural bent toward one or two of these, but usually not all three. And so the advantages of working with someone who maybe could possess all three of those, if I'm working with somebody on my team that has all three of those, I think one of the advantages is that it pushes me to do more. It pushes me to be better, to improve. I love working with people who are more talented than me in certain areas because I feel like it sharpens me. When you're on a ministry team, if you view it as competition, you're obviously going to butt heads. But when you view it as, to be complementary toward one another, and my deficit is compensated by what you are able to bring to the table. When you work with somebody that has skills and abilities that are different than yours or better than yours, to me, it sharpens my skills, and I want to become more ambitious to do more and be better. Any other thoughts you guys have on 4 before we move on? And then if you have any questions for Fred, we can ask him those too in the couple minutes we've got left. All right, let's open the floor. I've got one question for Fred, and if you guys have got something, feel free to ask it now. But Fred, for you personally, what's it like being in the middle? Because there's a little bit of a tension between what your boss wants you to do, and then you've also got volunteers and people under you, and there is probably some strain there and some tension. Can you talk just for a little bit about what that's like, where you are in charge of so many people on the one side, but you also answer to a boss? You're not the senior pastor. The buck doesn't stop with you. Can you talk a little bit about that tension and I guess rationalizing that?
Yeah, the term that I've always used with people is Pastor Josh wants. And so I'm literally a facilitator of his vision. Or I can, whether it's Pastor Josh or the board, I'm a facilitator. If I wanted to run my own organization, the buck would stop with me. I want to be, literally, I have a calling to be the second man. So it's easy for me to sit there and say, Pastor Josh or the leadership team wants to do this thing. And if they get upset with me, I simply say, look, I'm doing my job. Yeah. And say, hey, and people do get upset. And I also had to be kind and understand they don't have the full perspective. I remember being a church member growing up and say, if I was a church staff member, I would do this, this, and this. And then you get in a church staff and you realize that's not the case. And so the way to buffer that really is say, look, I will help you. I will take the concern. So from the member up, I take the concern up to Pastor Josh, but from Pastor Josh down, I need to also relay that vision down and say, okay, you're concerned about this. I understand that, but here's why we're doing this. So it's relaying the message. It's his message, not my message.
Awesome. Any other questions you guys want to throw out there? We're almost out of time. Go ahead, Chris.
I had just one really brief question. Obviously, there's you and Josh on the leadership team. Sometimes that leadership, at one point, it was just you and Josh. I think I could be wrong on that. But when that leadership team expands, what are some important things to consider when expanding that leadership team?
You can look at it always negative. I could sit there and say, I've done nothing wrong. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Or sit there and say, okay, now that this is happening, I can do this, this, and this. So practically speaking, for me personally, because the addition of Caleb and Jason to the executive team, I'm able to focus more on stewardship, focus more on administration, focus more on community relationships, all things I wanted to do. I've just never had the time. And so to me, and I'll be talking about this at the Idea Summit, as you're bringing people up, it's beneficial for you to do what you like more. Because there's things about being the sole executive pastor I just didn't like, but there's things that I am excited about because of bringing Caleb and Jason into the same room, which is going to be super huge, again, to accomplish the mission of the church. So.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments, feedback?
Good.
It's been fun.
All right. It's a good conversation. I really enjoyed the tandem of you guys working side by side, Fred and Josh, to do that talk. I thought that was good to hear Josh's take and then go back to you. That was well done.
I just want to say just quickly, I appreciate Fred and just watching his story. I haven't been able to tell him this personally, but just seeing.
Yes. And then train. Does that answer your question, Nick? Awesome.
Yes, those thanks.
Great, Jace, you can take over. I was just answering the final question.
Oh yeah, no worries. We had a good time in our breakout session as well. You want to recap yours and then I will recap mine and then I'll tell you guys what we got coming up next week. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Josh.
there was great. Yeah, there was great discussion, Jason, as it relates to what people like best about teamwork. What do they struggle when it comes to teamwork? We talked a lot about the importance of crucial conversations, when to have them, how to have them, how to address them in a spirit of humility. We talked about well, these are the things we talked about. We're running out of time, but it was good.
Yeah, we hit a lot of those similar tones as well. Fred also expounded a little bit more on defining roles, which I thought is huge importance for question number 3. And it was neat to see the diversity of the guys we had in our room. We've got, pastors that have got a staff, and we have other guys that are church planners that, they're seeing teamwork from a totally different perspective. And so that was really good too. One of the resources that Chris Rule pointed out was the book Humilitas by John Dixon. Josh, looks like you're familiar with that.
Yeah, it's a great
that
book.
that was one of the resources. And then Fred in his talk obviously used The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. Great resources on teamwork. Maxwell's got a couple books out there that reference teamwork as well. So really good discussion today, and enjoyed you and Fred kind of tag teaming that topic. It was neat to see your perspective in tandem with his. And so that was really good today. Any other thoughts from you, Josh?
No, I'm excited about, as we mentioned before, the summit coming up. For those of you guys who would just keep us in prayer. I know you members, you guys are highly invested in the network. It's really coming together. This is going to be by far the most exciting event that we've ever had. And I was just speaking with the team over it. Is anybody here familiar with Dr. Jack Graham? Familiar with Dr. Jack Graham over at Prestonwood in Dallas? I was just speaking with their team, and there's a possibility that maybe Dr. Graham will come and be a part of the Idea Summit as well, and be part of an interview that we do at the end of the day. He's friends with Tony Evans and wants to come and be part. So there's just so many really, truly exciting. The worship element is going to be incredible. In fact, if you have a worship pastor or a worship team, or a worship pastor that's like, man, how do I really transition from what we're doing to really advance to the next level? This is the event they want to come to. This event, I think it's 13 sessions in the worship track that are focused a lot on how to progress your church to a place where you want it to be. A lot of conversations on transition and how to be blended and what to do if you're where you're at in this conversation. So, man, the worship stuff is coming along really, really well. Not only what we're going to experience Monday night, Tuesday night, but what the track for worship leaders is going to be. It's really, really going to be good.
That's awesome. I can't say too much about the summit either. I've got a special resource that we're going to be giving out at the summit that is for members only. So you guys are involved in that. Can't tell you what it is, but you're gonna enjoy that. Josh, I haven't even told you yet. It's exciting. Have I piqued your interest? Are you curious now?
I'm ready to go. I really am.
It's going to be great. Register for that. Fred, special thanks to you for being with us today, taking time out of your schedule to share with us about teamwork. Next week is the 18th. We've got Nate Skelly with us. It's been a while since Nate was with us. He does a podcast. He's a financial advisor, does so from a ministry perspective. His topic next week is fighting the poverty gospel. And so that's gonna be a great topic and discussion as well. Thank you guys for joining us live. Those on the replay as well. You guys have a great week thinking outside the box. Take care.